Domantas Sabonis and Davion Mitchell were seen sitting courtside supporting the Sacramento Kings at Summer League. Kevin Huerter was also there. Harrison Barnes seen pictured with the team. Chimezie Metu as well. But no De'Aaron Fox. Some fans are concerned that the best player on the team and the team's leader is not there supporting the team. I'm telling you, it's not a big deal. We'll talk about it on today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off-season, presented to you today by Bet Online. They have you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports producer and reporter for ABC 10 News here in the California capital, and I'm back home. Happy to be back here in Sacramento following my weekend trip to Las Vegas, first ever trip to Summer League. And if you missed my couple of episodes that I recorded from my hotel room after the Kings' 2 Summer League games against the Orlando Magic and Indiana Pacers over the weekend, you can go and check those out right now. But I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be home. Sacramento Kings off once again today. They'll be back in action tomorrow, taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder and Chet Holmgren. Looking forward to watching that game like most of you are on TV. And then, of course, we will talk about that. But on today's Locked On Kings podcast, I'm talking about something that certainly I noticed being there inside the Thomas and Mack Center and Cox Pavilion, but something that a lot of Kings fans on social media have picked up on and many are not happy about. And that's the fact that De'Aaron Fox, Sacramento Kings, of course, star and highest paid player and leader, and as Luke Walton liked to call him, the head of the snake, De'Aaron was not seen in Las Vegas supporting the Sacramento Kings. In fact, it's, at least as far as I understand, De'Aaron Fox never went to Las Vegas for Summer League. And his teammate in Domantas Sabonis, some would say the Robin to his Batman, like I mentioned in the introduction, Davion Mitchell, who was, of course, a Summer League champion last year. Chimezie Metu seen there. Kevin Huerter was there. Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk kind of different because they had an introductory press conference. I never saw Malik Monk at any of the games. Maybe I missed that. I did definitely see Kevin Huerter at least there for the Orlando Magic game. But some fans are not happy by the optics, I guess, of all these players being there and the best player on the team not being there. And while I can understand to some extent any concern or frustration with that from a almost loyalist Sacramento Kings, I bleed purple perspective, we of course love to see the video of Huerter and Mitchell and Sabonis up and celebrating, having a great time when Keegan Murray hit that game-tying 3 against the Orlando Magic, right? That team camaraderie. We love that. I remember at the California Classic a number of years ago, there were pictures of De'Aaron Fox and I think Justin Jackson and Harry Giles all sitting courtside together in Sacramento watching that game. We like to see those pictures. We like to know that the players are as invested in the team as we are, right? I understand that. But to make a big deal out of De'Aaron Fox not being there, I think is going too far. I think it's going over the top. In fact, I don't think it's fair to De'Aaron to expect him to be there when some of his teammates are there. I would have loved to see De'Aaron there. I would have loved to see him supporting his teammates just like we all would have, right? It would have been cool. It would have been awesome. It would be fun to be able to talk to the guy, right? In reality, I believe De'Aaron is preparing for his wedding. He's definitely engaged, so I don't know when his wedding is or anything like that, but I know he's dealing with that. He also has his family and his son and everything that he deals with there. Plus, guys, it's his off season. The man works a great schedule, right? He has a great life. He makes a ton of money. So it's not necessarily fair to compare his job to our jobs or to those of us who have a daily 9 to 5 who have to grind every single day year round and don't get to take off seasons like De'Aaron does. But at the same time, too, De'Aaron's work does not stop when the regular season stops. De'Aaron is continuing to do individual workouts. He's hitting the gym. He's staying in shape. His work is not done. Plus, He has obligations elsewhere. I have no issue at all, truthfully, no issue with De'Aaron Fox not being there. No issue at all. Now, I know that in the case of like Davion Mitchell, right? Davion Mitchell is there. Not only is he there supporting the team, he's also at times working out with the team. I believe I don't remember actually if Davion or rather Domantas Sabonis has been working out with the team or not, but he's at least been there supporting, if nothing else. And we know we've seen videos of Domantas Sabonis hitting the gym, working really hard on his jump shot, especially during this offseason. De'Aaron's putting in the work too. I can promise you, De'Aaron Fox is putting in the work too. In fact, I know for a fact De'Aaron is putting in the work. I've seen videos, I've had conversations. So him not being at Summer Lake, to me, that's not a indication that he is at all disinterested with this team. That doesn't make him a bad teammate. That doesn't mean that he's not supporting these guys. We have no idea what kind of conversations are going on. In fact, from what we know about De'Aaron Fox as a teammate, Malik Monk talked about it, right? Malik Monk, Bam Adebayo, and De'Aaron Fox, all part of that Kentucky Wildcats team, they text and talk every single day, even though until now, none of them have played on the same team. Now, Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox are together here in Sacramento. We know De'Aaron is a good teammate. We know he's supportive. We heard Tyrese Haliburton last offseason talking about all the time that the two of them had spent together and how their relationship was growing. Now, ultimately on the floor, it didn't necessarily work out the way that we wanted. And I know that some people interpreted the Kings trading away Tyrese Haliburton as Fox and Haliburton didn't work together. And some people, for some reason, thought they didn't see eye to eye, which was completely false and completely not true. De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton had absolutely no issue with one another. I know De'Aaron's a good teammate. I know he's a good leader. I know he's communicating. We saw him in pictures going to Napa with half the team a couple of weeks ago. So De'Aaron choosing not to support the Sacramento Kings Summer League team, it does not mean that he doesn't care. Does not mean that he's a bad teammate. Does not mean that he's a bad leader whatsoever. If you wanted to see him there and are disappointed that he's not there from a fan perspective, okay, that's fine. You're allowed to be disappointed that he's not there, but don't make it more than what it is. De'Aaron has other obligations. He's doing other things. I think he responded to someone on Twitter saying, kind of mind your damn business. And trust me, as someone who knows that De'Aaron can respond to you in significant ways on social media, just let it be. Truthfully, just let it be. There are other things to be concerned about with Fox or to be critical about with Fox, especially when next season starts, right? If De'Aaron Fox starts next season, I've said this a million times, if De'Aaron Fox starts next season and he's not 100% ready to go, if he's not hitting the ground running, if he's not shrugging off or getting rid of these dreaded slow starts that have kind of plagued his career to this point, then at that point you can start getting critical and being a little bit concerned about De'Aaron Fox. Right now, I'm telling you, you're making a mountain out of a molehill if you're concerned with De'Aaron not being in Las Vegas. I think you're, as someone who has been picky before and admittedly has been picky and at times unfair with criticisms of De'Aaron Fox and a lot of players. It's not just De'Aaron. I've been critical of plenty of players and it hasn't necessarily been fair, right? I'm telling you, from my experience, that is something that is not worth getting riled up about. Because in the end, it really, truly does not matter as much as maybe we think it does in our brain because we have this hyper-sensitive Sacramento Kings loyalist mindset. It's okay to have that mindset. It's called being a diehard fan. It's what makes this fan base so phenomenal. So again, I'm not telling you you're wrong for not being happier or being disappointed that De'Aaron wasn't there. To not see De'Aaron, I would have loved to see De'Aaron celebrating on the sidelines with Davion and with DeMontis and with Kevin and all of them, Chimezi after that shot. That would have been phenomenal. But we already know that just because De'Aaron's not there supporting Keegan Murray doesn't mean he's not already working with and in conversations with Keegan Murray. Keegan said so himself. Keegan talked about the breakfast. I think it was breakfast that the two of them went out together before Keegan was even drafted. Like De'Aaron is part of the process. De'Aaron is a good teammate. He's a great leader. Everything's going to be fine. I guarantee you. I can't say I guarantee you. I'm pretty confident in saying that there's nobody in Sacramento on the Kings, nobody on that roster that is upset or concerned or bothered by De'Aaron Fox not being there. If they are, then I think that's maybe a little too sensitive, but I don't think that's the case whatsoever. because in his own way, I know De'Aaron Fox is supporting his teammates. I'm of all the things to be concerned about De'Aaron Fox, I've never, ever once, and I never will be concerned about him not supporting his teammates. He always does. A former Sacramento King, Tyrese Haliburton, he was at Las Vegas Summer League. We got to see him sitting courtside for the Kings and Pacers on Sunday. Sean Cunningham from Fox 40, he spoke with Tyrese very briefly, I think after the game, and Tyrese had something to say about his love for the fans, but also showed a little bit of still not necessarily hostility, but bitterness towards the organization. I want to address that and touch on that briefly here after I tell you about our title sponsor here of the Locked On Kings podcast today. That, of course, is Bet Online, your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including the Major League Baseball season going right now with the All-Star game coming up. There's going to be a lot of fun bets surrounding that. There are already future bets out for next year's NBA season and NBA awards. NFL future bets are going crazy right now with college sports beginning here very, very shortly too. You can get those all on Bet Online. They remains the just the best spot overall for your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events. And that includes MMA, boxing, and even golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at Bet Online, where the game starts. It was great to see both Tyrese Haliburton and Buddy Hield sitting courtside. Didn't get to speak to either of them. Actually, it was funny enough. I was walking through, I think it was the Cosmopolitan. Yeah, we were in the Cosmopolitan Casino on Sunday night after that game, and I was walking with King's Pulse's Brendan Nunez and Return of the Roar's Franklin Cardicelli and Chris Watkins. We're walking through the casino, and Brendan just had some luck at the roulette table, so he's going to cash out his chips, and he gets to the cashier's area, and who walks up but Tyrese Haliburton in street clothes. And if you don't know the dynamic between Tyrese and Brendan, they had a pretty cool dynamic here in Sacramento. Brendan at one point, I guess, questioned Tyrese's defense, so Tyrese always let him hear about that, but in a fun, kind of friendly way. The two of them had a great relationship, so it was a great night for Brendan. He got lucky at the roulette table and then got to see one of his favorite players. They had a moment, so that was the closest that I got to any interaction with Tyrese Haliburton. Did interact with Buddy Hield as well, but I liked seeing them there. It was good to see former Kings in the building. Good to see them supporting their team in the Indiana Pacers. And like I mentioned, Sean Cunningham from Fox 40, he got an interview very briefly with Tyrese after the game. He went and tweeted that out, so I'm not going to play it for you. I want you to go to his Twitter so you can listen to the whole thing, but I am going to pull kind of one quote from this. Sean basically said that Sacramento loves him, and does he still feel the same way towards the city? And Haliburton said, "Oh, for sure. With the fans forever. That's not a question. I hope people never, ever think that. My feelings towards the organization and the fans are completely different." So we already knew this, right? We already knew that Tyrese Haliburton loves Sacramento fans, and Sacramento fans love Tyrese Haliburton. He's going to be the most popular player not on the Sacramento Kings here in this city, maybe for the remainder of his career. Like, Tyrese is so beloved here in Sacramento, and for all the right reasons. We were all sad and stunned, really, to see him traded, even if some of us are happier with the trade than others. Tyrese will forever be a fan favorite here in Sacramento. He'll forever be rooted for, myself included. Like, I want to see Tyrese succeed, even if it hurts from a Kings perspective to see him go on and have a phenomenal career, knowing the Kings could have had that. I understand why Monte McNair made the move. Truthfully, I'm over that. There's nothing that Tyrese can do at this point in time that'll that will make me regret it. It more falls on what the Sacramento Kings do, or maybe what they don't do. If Domantas Sabonis walks after 2 years, then sure, I'll absolutely regret the trade. As of right now, I'm over Tyrese moving on, but I'm still very much rooting for him to move on. I'm happy to hear that he loves the fans and will continue to love the fans, and that's phenomenal, and I don't think that'll ever change. I'm not bothered by, but I'm curious about his frustrations with the Kings organization. On the other side of the floor from him was Monte McNair, Kings owner, Vivek Ranadive. They were all there, sitting a few feet, tens of feet, hundreds of feet maybe away. The other side of the court, whatever the hell that is. I don't know measurements. From Tyrese. And as far as anybody can tell who were in Cox Pavilion, myself included, we never saw Tyrese interact with any of those Kings people. Now, I don't think that's a big deal. I don't think Tyrese is obligated to talk to them, nor are they obligated to talk to Tyrese. I know Monty McNair very much cares about Tyrese. I know Monty McNair did not want to trade away Tyrese. He was happy with the deal that he got, but it was also a trade out of necessity in a lot of ways for Monty McNair. Monty wasn't actively shopping Tyrese Haliburton. Tyrese Haliburton was never on the trade block. It was just the piece that he had to move to make the move that he felt he had to make, right? I understand Tyrese being blindsided because he was blindsided by the Sacramento Kings by this trade. I understand him using this trade as motivation. Like he's motivated now to not not take for granted that the Sacramento Kings chose De'Aaron over him or chose Domantas Sabonis over him. I understand if that's what's going to fuel his fire to have a great NBA career. If his goal is to not only win with the Indiana Pacers, but to prove the Sacramento Kings wrong. As a competitor, I don't blame him for that whatsoever. Go for it, Tyrese, and I don't blame him at all. No, that's totally fine. If I were Tyrese, and this is very easy to say from my perspective as someone who's not actually in the league, and this didn't actually happen to, so take this with a grain of salt. But this is just my thought process on this. Part of me would be flattered by the package that the Kings got for me if I was Tyrese. Like to be traded as a second-year player who didn't even win Rookie of the Year, as a second-year player to be traded for a multi-time All-Star. That's significant. Like the Sacramento Kings had to give up Tyrese Haliburton. That was the only piece the Indiana Pacers wanted to take back or demanded really to take back in this Domantas Sabonis trade. Remember, at the beginning of the season, a lot of people did not think that Domantas Sabonis was going to be moved. He was definitely in rumors. He was theoretically on the block, but it's very hard to get good value for a multi-time all-star in a trade, especially for a team that's rebuilding. And not only did they get good value, they got an incredibly good, solid young player for them to build around. Again, if I was Tyrese, I would be a little bit flattered by what the Kings traded me for. Doesn't mean I wouldn't have bad feelings, but I would be a little bit flattered. Also, I don't think I look at the what happened with DeMarcus Cousins, right? The Kings basically saying, "Yeah, we're gonna sign you a max contract." They went over to his house, celebrated with him, and then traded him during the All-Star game. Like I look at that and how DeMarcus responded to that, and I look at Tyrese being kind of blindside traded in completely different lights. It didn't surprise me at all, nor do I blame DeMarcus Cousins for being upset at the Sacramento Kings, even if I was happy that the Kings traded DeMarcus Cousins away at the time. I don't blame DeMarcus for being pissed for the amount of money that he lost and for being completely blindsided by the team who said that they were going to bring him back, who basically lied to him. Tyrese, now I don't know, maybe Tyrese was lied to. Maybe they told Tyrese you're not being traded and traded him. I haven't heard that. I know Tyrese expected to stay here in Sacramento, but I don't think that Tyrese should have the same sort of venom towards Monty McNair and the Kings that DeMarcus had and has for Vlade Divac and the old Kings front office regime. But that's just me. I do have an issue though with there's an article from Yahoo Sports and they quote Tyrese and Fox 40's Sean Cunningham's interview with Tyrese, and one of the things they say in here bothers me more than anything. This line is, Halliburton is in a better situation now. Debatable. Indiana could be on the verge of becoming one of the NBA's more interesting up-and-coming teams. I kind of agree with that, except I think the Sacramento Kings are going to be significantly better than the Pacers. The 22-year-old Halliburton is a centerpiece of Indiana's new era. That's absolutely true. Here's the next line. The Kings are still doing Kings things. What the hell does that mean? The Kings are still doing Kings things. Look at the offseason that the Sacramento Kings have had. What the hell does that mean? The Sacramento Kings draft Keegan Murray 4th overall. Okay, maybe some people didn't like that, but look what Keegan's balling in Summer League right now. There can't be a single person watching Summer League that says, oh, Keegan Murray is not playing well. Keegan Murray is not worth the Sacramento Kings taking him 4th overall. That's ridiculous. But in addition to that, look at the offseason that the Kings have had. They turned Dante DiVincenzo essentially into Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk. They got 2 better shooters. Now, the biggest question mark I guess you could have about this offseason for the Kings is what they did with their 2 second-round draft picks, trading 37 for future second rounders and then trading whatever 40 something for Sasha Vezenkov, who sounds like now he's not coming over. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. We don't know about that. Like, if you want to be critical of something that the Kings have done this offseason, that's fine. But universally, this has been a really good offseason for the Sacramento Kings. So to put a line, that's just lazy. The Kings are doing Kings things. No, they're not. The Kings are doing good things. The Kings are doing the opposite of what Kangs things are. The Kings are actually doing smart things this offseason. That goes to show, and again, I'm not surprised by this. It continues to happen. People outside of Sacramento, national reporters, they don't pay attention to what the Sacramento Kings do. They just throw in lines like that because the Kings are low-hanging fruit. And I understand the Kings have to win their way out of that. They have to make other people pay attention. But I'm so bothered by lazy lines like that. I'm so bothered by it because I'm not here to tell you that the Sacramento Kings have had such a good offseason that they're definitely going to be a playoff team next year. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to guarantee that at all. But the Kings have made smart moves this entire offseason. And their biggest move that they made, drafting Keegan Murray 4th overall, has been a phenomenal pick to this point. So get the hell out of here with the Kings doing Kings things. Get the hell out of here with praising the Indiana Pacers and Tyrese Haliburton for that trade and not giving the Kings any love for acquiring a 2-time freaking all-star in Domantas Sabonis, putting together a good core, and now surrounding that core with players that actually make sense, shooters, good shooters. And then hiring Mike Brown, too, who is a great head coach hire, universally respected around the league. Get the hell out of here with the Kings doing Kings things nonsense. Stuff pisses me off. There's a rumor going around that the Miami Heat could potentially be interested in Harrison Barnes. I'm going to touch on that really quickly before we wrap up today's podcast and after I tell you about another great sponsor here of Locked On Kings. That's Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store or even your dealership to carry all the parts that you need. And even if they do carry them, it's their set brand, their set model, their set price point. You have no negotiation power whatsoever. You have no access to the savings like you get on rockauto.com. All you need is an internet connection, and suddenly 30, 50, or even 100% more savings at Rock Auto than at your local chain auto parts store. An example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 on average from the chain store, $216 on average from Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are reliably low for every single customer, and they have everything that you could need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today or find the solution to your auto parts needs when you go to rockauto.com. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. The Miami Heat are aggressively pursuing Kevin Durant. I think Adrian Wojnarowski said that either earlier today or yesterday. No surprise. I think Kevin Durant would be a phenomenal pickup for the Miami Heat. Doesn't surprise me at all that they're going after him as hard as they are. But in the event, reportedly, in the event that the Heat do not land Kevin Durant, there are rumors that they could potentially be interested in acquiring Harrison Barnes. Again, another smart pickup. Not as good nearly as Kevin Durant, of course, but there's a reason why so many teams who are established playoff teams have rumored interest in Harrison Barnes, because he's a solid piece. He helps their wing depth. He makes up a little bit for some of the stuff that PJ Tucker did when they lost PJ Tucker. Like, Harrison Barnes is a team that Harrison Barnes is a player that I think almost every team in the NBA wants to some extent. Now, there's of course a price that they're willing to give up, and that's where I'm hung up. That's where I continue to be hung up with the idea of the Kings trading Harrison Barnes. I understand that Harrison is on an expiring contract. I really do. And I know that there's a very good chance that he could walk at the end of that contract. That's a risk that at this point I'm willing to take because I don't know what the Sacramento Kings can get back that makes sense for Harrison Barnes. The only thing that makes sense for me in a Miami Heat deal, and even so I'm not sold on it, is Duncan Robinson. The Kings trade Harrison Barnes, take back Duncan Robinson. He's going into year 2 of his 5-year contract, but the final year, I believe, is a team option, early termination option. He's owed 16.9 this season, 18.1 next season, 19.4 the following season. Then his termination option is 19.8 in 2025-2026 season. Duncan Robinson is a very good shooter. He can play the small forward position. So can Kevin Huerter, debatably. I wouldn't hate it. I really would not hate that deal. I think the Kings could probably ask for a little bit more, maybe a draft pick on top of that. I don't know how good that draft pick is going to be because it's the Miami Heat and they're expecting to be contenders. I don't know. It's going to probably be heavily protected. I just have a hard time trading Harrison Barnes. I really do. I have a hard time because I think Harrison Barnes is really good for this Kings team as both a leader and as a player. He needs to get more consistent, but I've said from the beginning of this offseason, if the Sacramento Kings can find a way to make Harrison Barnes their fourth option on offense, they're in a really good spot. A really good spot. And I think Harrison Barnes is now the fourth option for this Kings team. Some would say five, depending upon if Malik Monk or Kevin Huerter get big spots or big moments at that starting two guard spot. And this is assuming that Keegan Murray is the starting four with Harrison Barnes playing the three. I think Harrison Barnes is going to be really good for the Kings this year. And I do think the Kings have a shot at re-signing him, especially if this season goes well. That's a risk that I personally am willing to take. But if the Miami Heat are interested in Harrison Barnes, I would consider Duncan Robinson. I definitely would consider it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Tyrese Haliburton's comments and maybe bitterness towards the Kings organization. Talk about De'Aaron Fox not being in Vegas. Talk about it all. At Matt George Sack on Twitter. You can reach me there. My DMs are open even if we don't follow each other. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or you can leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Again, it's so great to be home from Las Vegas. I had a wonderful time. If you ever get the chance to go to Summer League, do it. It's like a basketball festival. It's so much fun. And of course, Las Vegas is Las Vegas. So I definitely hope I get the opportunity to go back next year. And thank you to all of you who make it possible. For those of you who continue to support the podcast, support my work at ABC 10, you are all incredible. And it's because of you in so many ways that I get to do what I do. And I never take that for granted. So thank you so much. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. We'll have a podcast after the Kings and Oklahoma City Thunder game tomorrow. Plus, there are now some anonymous scouts that are saying, oh, Keegan Murray, I thought he was the second best player in the draft. Funny how the narrative is suddenly changing a little bit nationally with Keegan Murray. I'm not saying that people didn't like Keegan Murray, but there's a reason why it was all about Chet and Paolo and Jabari and Jaden and then Keegan. Now all of a sudden, oh no, I was thinking Keegan was up there with the top three, the second best prospect in the draft. Okay, we'll address that on tomorrow's podcast, along with the Kings and Oklahoma City Thunder game. So please join me for that. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.